Hi, my name's Chip and I'm a videographer from Worthing on the south coast. And today I've teamed up with Wex to bring you this behind the scenes video of how I might go about shooting a promo for one of my clients. I'm here in Brighton today at this maker's workshop for Wies and Lau, who produce these incredible bits of home furnishings, furniture, all made out of recycled plastic. I'm going to be using the brand new Fuji X-H2S. I'm using it for the very first time, so I'm excited to see what the camera's capabilities are. It's a really nice, nimble bit of kit, so I'm really looking forward to giving it a go. So let's get going. So before we get started, I'm just going to go through what's in my bag. So we're going to start off, obviously today, we are using the Fuji X-H2S with the Fuji 16 to 55mm lens. Full frame equivalent is roughly, that 24 to 70. It's constant aperture at 2.8, so it should give us a nice variety of shots today. On top of that, I've got my Atomos Shinobi. Not a recorder, but it's just a nice 5-inch monitor. Really great for just monitoring, making sure focus is right. It's got all the built-in false colors, histograms, zebras, all the things you can name. It's great. I can't live without it now. Along with that, I always bring with me my MacBook. It's the M1 Max. It's just really for if I need to double check things, monitor things on site, if I need to back things up, I've got that there and available for me. And then inside my bag, I have all kinds of goodies. So in this part of the bag would normally live my Amran 200X, but we've already got it set up today. So that lives in there along with its cabling. And then this section here is obviously where I keep my camera body and lens. I like to turn up to a shoot with a camera body and lens set up. It just takes the pressure off where you can really get going straight away rather than faffing around with more and more kit. So I like to have something prepared, ready to go, SD cards clean, so you can just turn up and start shooting if you need to. We also have multiple sections of audio stuff. So I've got a Rode Video Mic Pro that can either go on top of my camera or I can boom it off an arm if I need to. I brought with me my Zoom H1 field recorder. This goes everywhere with me just because you never know when you might need something for capturing field audio, any kind of sound effects. You can get nice and close. It's really light and portable and it's just so easy to carry around. It stays with me everywhere. I've got a lav mic and my Rode Wireless Go set. If I need that for interviews or if people are kind of walking around and I need to capture them talking, that goes with me everywhere. Make sure it's charged before every shoot. This section is for my batteries. So I've got gimbal batteries, camera batteries, NPF batteries, all of various shapes and sizes. Then we move on to the all-important waterproof case for my SD cards. I firmly believe that every SD card should live in one of these. If you're going around and about, you don't know whether it's going to be rained on. So this is just protective for all your important data. I've also got my pop-up grey card. If I'm in situations where lighting's all over the place, maybe you're working with different color temperatures, this is really important, A, for getting your exposure correct, but just making sure your white balance is in check as well. So, and then we move on to this section, which is just full of various accessories. Never go anywhere without gaffer tape. It will always come in handy. This is my multi-tool, which I will use this on set more times than you can imagine. So it's pliers, it's screwdrivers, it's anything you can think of. So it's a really handy tool to carry around with you because you will never know when you might need that. I always carry around a spare tripod plate with me, and all important, I've got my rocket blower for my sensor, cleaning my sensor, or I've got this for cleaning lenses, etc. So it's always good to check if you are changing lenses on site. Luckily today we're not, because we're using our zoom lens, so it's going to live on there all day. But if you are changing lenses, always good to make sure you've got a clean sensor and clean lenses. Okay, so that is what is in my camera roller bag. Along with this, things that don't fit in the bag. Really important, I've got my Aperture Light Dome 2 that sits on my key light. This gives us a nice soft light to use, not too harsh, nice soft roll off on people's faces, so really important to have that with you. I've got my gimbal if I need some steady shots or B-roll and things like that. I've got a variety of other lights for fill lights, backlights, those kind of things. Really important on set is to bring with you some heavy duty stands for your lighting. So I bring C stands with me. They're so handy for lights, audio, microphones, things like that. And it just means you don't have to worry about your things falling over when you're around on set. So I would say invest in decent stands because they will last you forever. And finally, the last thing I would recommend that's often overlooked is bringing with you a couple of really decent extension leads. If you're working in a studio environment with lighting that doesn't run off batteries, you will definitely need extension cables when you're moving around lighting. It gives you flexibility to shoot where you want, film where you want. So definitely don't forget your extension cables and invest in high quality ones. So that is what's in my camera bag. Let's get on with today's shoot. Okay, so I'm just setting up for the interviews now, and Weez and Mel are actually a sister duo, but instead of getting them both together, I wanted to get them separately. It means that I can, A, test out the Fuji's external mic port, and it means that I can get nice and close with my microphone, so it means that we can get a really nice voiceover for each of them. So we're going to do the interview in two sections, two separate interviews. And so I am setting up, looking into the corner of this room that we've got. It's a really nice workshop space, and we've got south-facing windows with lots of nice light flooding in. So that's kind of dictating where I want to set up my camera. I want to be shooting with those windows in the background, and then I can get my key light in from the side, and it really feels like more of that window light is coming in and hitting our interviewee's face. So it's kind of a way of faking that idea of more natural light coming in. And then I've just got a backlight just to pick up some hair because it's a little bit dark in this corner. That's just a hard light source straight onto the shoulders and hair. And then all I've done is I've set up my Falcon Eyes roll panel LED just in the background, just to bring out a bit of the background because the window light was quite bright. And so therefore the contrast ratios are a bit too heavy for me. So I've just used this just to lift up that background a bit and bring up the exposure a little bit. So it's often the choice of whether you go with a lav mic or a boom mic. I personally prefer to go with a boom mic where I can. So I'm just going into the 3.5mm port on the Fuji directly. I just find there's more resonance with this. If someone's stationary and they're not rustling around, it keeps them free. There's always the worry with the lav where it starts to get a little bit flat sounding. This just sounds a bit warmer to my ears. So we're just setting up for the interviews. I'm going to do two different interview locations just so they don't look the same. It gives us a bit more variety. And something I like to do is, while I'm on the camera, is have someone sit in where the interviewer would be. And it just maybe helps put our interviewee at ease because I know that Lou hasn't been on camera very much. So it might just help her be at ease. So we've got Mel sat here. So the sisters can essentially just have a chat and it makes it nice and easy for us. So we just finished up the first interview with Lou. In my camera, she's sat camera right looking left. And so what I wanted to do is switch it around. So Merle is then on camera left looking right. So we kind of have this juxtaposition between the two sisters. So we're just gonna shift over to the other side of the workshop, turn the camera around, and then we'll get a separate angle for the second interview. So probably somewhere around about where this is. Okay. What? Yeah, again, so I want my window in the background, so then it motivates our key light again, so I can get my key light over here, and it looks like it's window light coming in. So I'm gonna keep that in mind for my shot. So I think it's important to remember we've got south-facing windows here with the sun beaming in. There's no blinds or anything, so we really can't black them out. So there's no point trying to compete with them, which is why I want to use them as the motivation for my key light. There's no point in us really putting our key light on the opposite side. Then you'll end up with a really flat image with very little, too much fill on it. So We're sticking with the window light as our motivation for our key. We're really not trying to fight it. We're trying to use it to our advantage. Okay, so we're going to move on to capturing some B-roll now, and part of the process is based on this granite worktop. So obviously this isn't movable, so we kind of have to work around this. So I've bought this cheap bit of black fabric here just to help shape the light from the window a little bit, and I'm boosting it a little bit with my key light as well. We're not removing it, but we're just trying to keep a bit more shadow on the near side of the face of Louise, who's going to be doing a bit of this process. And it just gives us a bit more depth and a bit more shape in our image. So I guess one of the benefits of this Fuji is it is really portable and nimble. So I'm going to go a bit handheld, test out some of the inbuilt stabilization. I'm not going to overdo this though. I am going to use the tripod as well. I don't want everything to be handheld, but so far, even at quite zoomed in, I'm close to 55 here, so that's the equivalent of nearly a 70mm on a full frame. It's still looking really smooth at the moment, which is, yeah, really nice. So I'm just using my Atomos Shinobi as well, just to give me a slightly larger viewing. But at the same time, because this is my first day using it, I don't have the Fuji LUTs built into it. So I'm kind of going off the colors of the built-in view assist on the Fuji, and I'm just using this just to have a little bit more screen real estate to use. So a benefit, again, of having a zoom lens is, personally, when I'm filming B-roll, I like to grab at least 2 angles of each subject or each event that's taking place. So for example, here we're doing kneading and kind of rolling out. So rather than just getting one shot of that and then moving on to the next one, I'd always like to get a wide shot of it and then a tighter, more detailed, intricate shot. You won't necessarily use all of them, but it just means you have a bit more versatility in post and more to play with. And just mixing 2 angles together sometimes gives the impression that you might have a bigger crew, you've got 2 or more cameras. So it really helps with an edit if you have those shots available to you. So I'm going to repeat a very similar set of B-roll there, but on a tripod now. I think it's sometimes when you don't have much time and you're filming, it's quite a natural thing to just go handheld the whole time. But I think it's important just to use that effect when you want to use it rather than out of necessity. So I think it's always good if you can to grab some still shots, and then it kind of adds more weight to the shots you do decide to use your handheld. So yeah, I guess using handheld wisely as opposed to all the time is something that I try to do in my filming and editing. So we're just filming a shot over by the ovens, but it's a little bit darker there. So I'm just adding in a hard light source straight onto the oven that we're using, just to help replicate the sunlight, which is not quite reaching over to where that oven is. So this should just help us a little bit. Okay. So for each process that we're going through, in this particular instance, we're kneading the plastic out. We're going to pick out each section of the process, and then we're going to try and capture minimum two, hopefully 3 different angles of each thing. And it just gives us plenty to work with in post. So in this particular instance, it's the ovens that are causing a slight problem, but be aware of mirrors, pictures, anything with glass surfaces, you're always going to get reflections. So just be aware of where you're standing and just make sure that you don't get yourself in any of your shots. So in this particular one, I can just see myself a little bit, so I'm going to set this off to record, and then I'm going to make sure that I move out of shot. So I'm just grabbing some B-roll with Merle, who is kind of fashioning some new coasters. So yeah, luckily we've got at least 3 of these to do, so I've got plenty of time to get the B-roll. So I'm just kind of going between close-ups of hands, but also getting close-ups of Mel's face as well while she's doing it, just so we've got things to cut to, giving us different options in the edit. So we're just getting set up for another location here. This location is a lot smaller than the previous workshop. So we're going to start working with a bit of natural light in here. Yeah, so the first thing that I would do in a situation like this is turn off all the lights inside the room. So we've got control of our lighting and we don't get any color temperatures clashing. And then if you don't have space for setting up lighting or anything, my advice would be to always try and find a north-facing window. North-facing means that we're not going to get any harsh sunlight coming in. It's going to be a really nice, soft ambient light. And it's also just coming from one direction. So it's a surefire way of really simply and easily getting a nice, soft image. So I know I'm using this zoom lens and it's not a macro, so I'm just going to see how close I can get to Louise's hand here, and we can get pretty close. We're about 2 feet away, I would say, at 55, so that's pretty good. And yeah, rolling. So we're just going to film a little bit of the actual cutting process. I'm just trying to look at different angles and things rather than always just going at eye level. So it's always important to bear in mind the best angle might be above or below. It's not always just where your eye line is, so bear that in mind. Okay, so we're just finishing up the shoot today now. What are my thoughts on the Fuji X-H2S? I've really enjoyed filming with it. It's been kind of a bit of a throwback to using kind of one of these smaller run and gun style cameras again. And it's been so much fun just because it feels more freeing than when you're tied down by bigger, heavier cameras. You can really be nimble with it. You can move around quickly, try out different angles, find what works and what doesn't work much quicker than you might do with a larger camera setup. The zoom lens has been great. Fixed constant aperture at 2.8. I love the small form factor for travel and things like that. I could certainly see this being useful for travel vloggers, kind of hybrid shooters that are out and about. It feels really robust and solid. It's got all the filming kit that you might need. It's got the full-size HDMI, which I really think is an essential these days. It's got your microphone in, headphone out for monitoring audio. So all in all, it's been a great camera to use. I think the battery life has been pretty good. I've lasted on one battery. I did have it plugged in via the USB-C port for a while, but it's lasted me all day quite comfortably. One of the slight issues that I came across was that the base ISO for F-Log2 is 1250, which is quite a high ISO for a base one. And I was really finding that it was pushing my ND filter to the limit, even shooting inside. Because we've got the natural daylight coming through the windows, it certainly was close to overexposing when I was wide open at 2.8 or around 3. So my suggestion with this would be is if you are going to be shooting an F-Log2, you're going to have to look into a really solid ND filter, and more than likely one that goes above that standard 2 to 5 stop. I would definitely advise getting a 6 to 9 or something similar as well, just to make sure you're covered should you want to keep that aperture wide open. So I've had a great time filming today with Louise and Mel. I think their products are incredible, so make sure you go and check them out. I've been Chip, and you can find all my social links in the description below. We're going to leave the 90-second trailer at the end of this behind the scenes video, so I really hope you enjoy it. It's all been filmed on the Fuji X-H2S. Thanks to Wex for having me on board, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
It's just kind of in both of our natures to use scrap materials, things that have gone to waste that no one else wants. It's about finding uses for those materials and treating them with respect.
Both of us have always had a fascination, borderline obsession, with reducing the amount of waste that we create. I think it was instilled within us from quite a young age from our parents. Taking something which was once single use and, destined to be either landfill or to be incinerated or to be recycled abroad, taking that back into our studio and to be able to work with it and turn it back into a raw material.
You can plan the colours, you can mix them all individually, you can create layering styles, but when it comes to the actual press, that's what's exciting. You never know how each piece is going to come out.
I've always loved interior design and pattern design and colour design. So as soon as I saw what Louise was doing, it just fascinated me that you could literally create anything that you've got in your head. You can create that from the plastic.
You've got something that looks really beautiful and organic and interesting, but turning that into a useful product, that was always the main challenge. For us, it's all about the craft processes. This is specifically not a mass-manufactured product. And the beauty of it is in the craft and in the making.